Welcome, everybody, to the Monday Night Tours Special Edition. We are your guides that are taking us through the Monday Night Tours, but not this week, and maybe not going forward. I am Josh Kaiser. I am here today with the Lee Marshall to my Tony Schiavone, Mr. Kyle Hoagland.
Oh, don't you dare call me that name ever again. But what's going on, everybody?
And
you get a pass on the special edition.
And on the special edition, we have a. Is that the third man? Is that? It is. It's Hollywood Haddix joining us.
I don't know. Sadly is the right word, but I got that Lee Marshall joke there.
So that is a joke, and we decided that we're going to try something different on the network, the WWE Network, which of course we have been following, watching all of our Monday Night Wars while we've been doing the podcast, watching all the programs. They released Thunder, and that has always been something a little near and dear to our hearts. It's also been home to a lot of shitty wrestling and bad booking. And we thought we'd go ahead and review it, and we may start doing the episodic review of Thunder going forward. As you can see, Haddix is back with us now. If you might remember him from episode 1 and maybe 2 of the Monday Night Tours. So we're doing a special edition of the tours, and then we're probably going to change the name going forward. But for now, it's under the working title of the Monday Night Tours, which would be very WCW of us to call it the Monday Night Tours, with the show being on a Thursday.
Absolutely, and I think the reason why we decided we wanted to do go this direction is that, first of all, it's something fresh. I don't think anyone's done this, obviously, because Thunder literally debuted last week on the network, and I think the other fun thing is going to be, as we'd explained at the beginning of the Monday Night Tours, for people who have been hanging on that long and clearly remember Haddix. WCW is not exactly his must-see TV back in 1998, especially during the I would say the 98 and 99. WCW was probably not much on your radar.
That was probably even before I started really watching WWE or WWF at the time.
Yeah, for what it's worth, even when I got back into wrestling, this is just before. I probably got in about right around April, maybe May of 98. So this, of course, is January of 98 is when Thunder starts. And this is sort of when the Monday Night Wars are really heating up, and WCW is just killing it. They're been on top of the ratings war since June. The past 30 weeks straight, WCW has beaten Raw week in and week out. And Turner and the executives at Turner wanted to kind of bump the ratings on TBS, so they told Bischoff and company that, hey, we want a Thursday night show. And Bischoff says, we really don't have the personnel for it. I don't want to do it. And he pretty much told everybody on his side that we're not going to do this unless Ted Turner himself says, we're going to go ahead and do this. So Ted Turner must have said that because the show was created. And they let him sign Bret Hart, and that was, I guess, apparently part of the deal. They said, we're going to get you Bret Hart, you're going to get us this 2-hour show on Thursday nights. And that said, that's sort of the background. I mean, it's a hot, the wars are hot, WCW's hot, and we're coming fresh off of Starrcade 97, which was the big build-up for, of course, the NWO is the hottest thing in wrestling. Hogan's at the top of his game as a heel. And he was battling Sting, and this was the first match Sting had been in almost a year. Of course, he was going from the spiky blonde-haired face paint
surfer dude, yeah,
to the Crow, yeah, to the Crow. Of course, mysterious, doesn't talk, doesn't speak, kind of hangs out in the rafters, things like that. So the big build up there, which kind of fell really flat, and we'll kind of get into that as we go through tonight's show because we're going to get a lot of recap on Starrcade and the Nitro that kind of followed and where we're all at with that. So that's a little background on what's happening in wrestling in WCW in 1998. So let's just get into it, guys. It's the first episode of Thunder. They're doing a 3-hour special for us, and we're live from Daytona Beach, and they're going to be live on Thunder for the next couple of years anyways, and that of course causes many problems too from the production standpoint, but they open up, they got an intro video, and Haddix, you noted that you actually knew all the wrestlers in the intro video, which is a good start for your WCW knowledge here.
Yeah, we started the episode real on a high note with that.
And then you got Tony Schiavone. He's calling this like we're witnessing the Super Bowl here. The way Schiavone is calling this premiere debut episode of Thunder, and you've got the pyros, you've got this set there, guys, and it sort of kind of got this Mayan temple sort of effect. What did you guys think about the set here?
It reminded me of like WCW Saturday Night, but with boulders. Like that's all I got out of it. Or it actually looked a lot like take Nitro and take Saturday Night and turn it into a ruin, and that's what Thunder is. It really wasn't bad for its time. I mean, I don't think it was cheesy or poorly produced. Sort of, the backdrop seemed like it was hastily made, but I do give them credit that I think they probably put more money and production value into that than anything WWE, WWF ever did during that time. So I'm not really. I can judge it in 2018. I probably wouldn't have judged it in 1998.
Haddix, what did you think about it? Yeah.
I'd probably have to agree with that. It didn't, maybe a little cheesy, but again, you remember you're watching something from the 90s, and it really wasn't that bad. The first time I saw it was when Hoagie was streaming it, whatever day that was, and I think the first thing that jumped to my mind was Legends of the Hidden Temple.
It definitely does have that, has that Legends of the Hidden Temple feel. Just, I mean, it kind of looks that way, like an old temple kind of feel, but then it's also... because it has that 90s aesthetic to it, it looks like it could have came right off the set of Legends of the Hidden Temple or something. What'd you guys think about the color scheme they chose? Of course, Raw and Nitro both have that red sort of bright color and a little bit of orange kind of neon, and Thunder is this like kind of a blue color.
It's like a blue purple. It's a stormy kind of color. So I mean, as far as being called Thunder, I think the color scheme they did, I had no qualms with it.
Is it I guess I just didn't even think about this, but I guess I just realized WWE would later copy that color scheme
with SmackDown.
Right?
Yeah, I always thought that was interesting that SmackDown went blue as well. I don't know what was the cause for that. I know if they just were doing their own thing and it just happened to be red for one, blue for the other, and it just so happened to be coincidental.
And they also went head to head against Thunder, didn't they? Did on Thursdays.
Yeah, that's true.
It started out.
Yeah, and then it eventually went to Friday. It kind of bounced around, but I think they did start on Thursdays, and then and this show, for what it is, Thursday's a big deal. You're looking at a Thursday time slot. This is back in the day when NBC was showing, like, it had, I think Seinfeld was at its peak. I think Friends was still going on. It had a tough Thursday night schedule to battle, with basic cable. And it did pretty well early on. So I think this show got around a 4 rating, which is great. And was, pretty close to what it was doing on Monday nights. So they got to be happy about that. We're going to kick things off with the commentary team. We got a 3-man team, and it's going to rotate tonight, and it rotates a lot going forward. We're going to get a lot of different combinations, but the initial team, Kyle, Tony Schiavone, Bobby Heenan, of course, we're familiar with both of them from Nitro, and I think at this point they're standards on Nitro. And then the third man, Mr. Lee Marshall.
Sleepy Time Tea, Lee Marshall.
Good. He's no Mongo McMichael, but God, he puts me to sleep. Haddix, what was your impression? As somebody who probably isn't really familiar with any of these, what'd you think about this commentary group?
I'll say, as far as the other two, Bobby and Tony, if you will, I don't really know them that well either, other than from kind of the Nitros that we've talked about. I have no idea who Lee Marshall is. I don't know if he came from wrestling. No clue whatsoever. But he was very, very boring. I don't know who thought it was a good idea
Just
to put him on
incredibly boring. And
oh my god,
Shivani has a podcast, and they actually recently, before Thunder was released on the network, just did a show about the first Thunder because it was their 20th anniversary. And he's talking about that, and he said he actually wanted Lee Marshall to be the play-by-play for Thursday nights. He thought he was a good play-by-play guy. Gotta say, I just didn't see it myself. So I
could see that he has the voice of somebody who would do like football commentary. It's got like the 40-yard line there. Like he had that,
but it's
that kind of voice for it.
Yes, but it's very dry. Like I don't see the inflection that needs to come. Like it's like you said, it's like oh, and there's a body slam, but instead of but he just doesn't seem like I couldn't see him getting excited for a jackhammer or something like that. You know,
once again, like Tony. Well, that's the thing. Like Tony Schiavone, and we'll learn this, and we know, but Haddock, you'll learn. Tony Schiavone could sell a stubbed toe and make it seem like it's the greatest spectacle in the history of sports entertainment. So I feel like Lee Marshall
is the exact opposite of that.
Yes, he is the yang to the yin of Tony Schiavone.
Yeah, so it's an interesting team. But we're gonna we'll get some rotating as we go, and when that comes up, we'll discuss it. The commentary team is gonna discuss that. You know, tonight's show they've got footage from Starrcade, which happened 10 or 11 days ago. We're going to get a replay of Eric Bischoff versus Larry Zbyszko for the battle of WCW Monday Nitro. And the Macho Man was supposed to be in the opening match, guys, but he's not here yet. So you'd think he would have shown up on time for this debut show of Thunder, but apparently he is late. So instead, we're going to get a replay.
And I think that's a legitimate thing because that doesn't make sense to be a storyline to be late. So I feel like he literally, once again, this is live television. He probably wasn't there yet.
I don't know. I don't buy that because if that was the case, you just put something else in that first slot for a match.
Well, they did they did like a whole big round of recaps at the beginning. It seemed like they were starting with a match and then talk a little bit about recaps, but they went like 3 straight like video montages or video packages at the beginning. It seemed like there was something. Once again, it's live TV. I think something did happen that had made them have to steer course. That was
like Macho Man had to take a dump, and he's like, "Guys, I'm just not ready yet." So just say I'm late to the arena. That's true. We have been. So the first replay we're getting of the night. It's from Nitro this past Monday. We get 2 limos pulling up, and it's all the NWO. And there's a bunch of members getting out of one limo, a bunch of members getting out of the other. And the commentary booth is saying, "Is there dissension amongst the NWO because they took 2 different limos to get to Nitro?" And I don't know about you guys, but I just said, no, there's a shitload of people, and it needs to carry 2. They need 2 limos to carry them all.
Yeah, I didn't understand that was the reason for the dissension was that they didn't feel like turning a fucking limo into a clown car. Of course, have 2 limos. You have like 30 people in the NWO.
They're big dudes.
Obviously they're not all little tiny guys. I think the thing that really surprised me was all the people that were like in there, like in the limos, and then we were watching Thunder, and the people that we watched who were members of the NWO were in neither of those limos. So I'm like, there was even more members of the NWO.
Haddox, what was because this is really your first sort of introduction to the NWO. What was your initial thoughts when you saw that it's not just Hogan, Nash, and Hall?
Well, so yeah, I mean, again, back when I was into the Attitude Era, when I was on, people talked about wrestling, so I was well aware of the NWO, who they were, but I never realized how many, I don't know if jobbers is the right word, but how many jobbers are in the NWO, like random people that I'm like, I don't even know who that guy is.
1998 was not the worst of it, trust me. It balloons out of control later.
It's like they just accept, if somebody be like, I want to be in the NWO, they're like, all right, you can be in.
I read on Wikipedia, there's like what they refer to as like I think 7 or 8 different iterations of the NWO, and a couple of them are towards the like they considered Sting at his match with Triple H at WrestleMania a couple of years ago as NWO members, which I wouldn't count then, but they said there's been 62 different members in the NWO, which is just insane to me, and you'll see a lot of them going forward. But they do cut to Bischoff in the ring later at a promo that same night on Nitro, and he basically says that everything is good with the NWO, no problems. We cut back to the commentary team at Thunder, and they said Macho Man's still missing, so we're going to go back to more replays. So then we cut back to another replay from Nitro. We got Nick Lambros, who apparently is like a lawyer for WCW or something. He's there with Mean Gene.
He's the same guy that took the title away from the Giant after Halloween Havoc.
Ah, there you go.
Same guy.
He basically says that there was a near riot after Baltimore following Starrcade and Nitro. He says all WCW contracted wrestlers are subject to fines and suspensions now. They're done with this shit. And any NWO members that are going to be on a WCW show, they're going to be up for fines and suspensions as well if they don't abide by the laws and regulations set forth by the WCW committee. We go back to the commentary booth at Thunder. They're going to tell us that there's apparently more that happened when it went off the air at Nitro this past Monday, which we'll find out later. Then we go to our third replay already, and it's J.J. Dillon telling Nick Patrick on this past Monday that he is suspended until at least the next show, of course, Thursday on Thunder, when he can sort this out. So Nick Patrick is basically sent home midway through Nitro and will be maybe reinstated the following wrestling show. Then we get our fourth replay, which shows when Luger cradled Savage for a 3 count, and I think this was on Nitro as well, or maybe this was Starrcade, I forget.
It was Nitro.
Savage is claiming that there's a fast count, and Savage grabs David Pinzer, and his chair, and I had to laugh when Heenan said, "I'd rather have his chair." Bischoff grabs the chair from Savage before Savage could do something, which makes Savage turn around and deck Bischoff, so you got 2 NWO members getting into it, sort of. But you don't really know there if Savage knew that it was Bischoff grabbing the chair or thought it was someone else. And you think Bischoff grabbed the chair because he's trying not to have his guys fined and suspended for breaking WCW laws. Needless to say, Hogan and Savage start fighting. Nash lays out Macho Man, so it looks like there is some dissension amongst the NWO members. And that's it for all the initial replays. And before we move into our opening match, this was already an insane amount of replays. But what bothered me most, I think, was the lightning bolt and thunder sound effects that we had to hear every time they cut from a replay to Thunder, back to the replay, back and forth, back and forth. I think I heard that 7 or 8 times here.
I wonder who the guy who was in charge of like the switchboard, where like I think he was just like, oh my god, I can't wait to hit this button so much during this show. And once again, it's you don't obviously need it through every single cutaway. Yes, it was overdone. Yes, it's something we're going to judge more now. I'm sure it's something that you and I watched Kaiser, and it totally went right over our heads as how the fuck old were we? 13 years old. Like that was something that we weren't, I'm sure, like complaining about. I don't remember us talking on the bus about, man, they really used that lightning bolt graphic, overly. So it's once again, it's just funny what we catch now, what we think about now with our, once again, it's always the rose tinted glasses.
Right. Now we'll move into our opening bout. Of course, Macho Man, you want to leave with your best foot forward. It is your debut episode of Thunder, your opening match. Let's put the butts in the seats. Let's put the remotes down. We've got Macho Man Randy Savage, and he's going to be battling Chris Adams.
For those who are not sure about Chris Adams,
join the club.
Let us know too. So I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. He
looked like a majorette or something.
He was part of the Blue Bloods with Regal and Dave Taylor and stuff like that. And I don't know. I just questioned this whole thing. I had to laugh, though, that Lee Marshall starts mentioning Pogo, which is a political cartoon from back in the day, and to make some point about, I don't even remember what it was. And the fact that he's bringing up political cartoons from back in the day tells you everything you need to know about the charisma that is Lee Marshall. The match is pretty much as worthless as you'd expect it to be. Macho Man pulling some heel tactics where he's going to pull Chris Masters up before a 3 count at one point.
Just call him Chris Masters.
I did. I don't know why I did that. Chris Adams.
I don't know who would be more angry. I have no idea.
Right? Yeah, I don't know. Eventually, Macho Man is sent to the outside, and he kind of just stumbles around for a very long time, I thought. Like an unnecessary long time before all of a sudden you realize why he's standing and kind of wandering aimlessly. Because out comes Luger, who nails Macho Man with the chair. He throws Macho Man back into the ring, and Chris Adams is going to get the first 3 count on Thunder. Didn't see that coming. Did not see that coming. I gave this one star, though.
Like random trivia. That's like the random trivia of WCW. Who scored the first pinfall on WCW Thunder? And I think Chris Adams would have not even been like anywhere on the radar. You said what, a star and a half?
I gave it a star.
I gave it a star and 3/4. And the reason why I did that was because it really showcases the arrogant persona of Savage, which is not something you see very often. At least I think the last time we saw something like that was like Macho King back in the 80s. And you can really tell that he's like, it really shows his experience in the ring, as far not just from wrestling, just his person, just like I said, just his persona and everything like that. The whole pulling up, I just thought the actual, I guess I wouldn't say chemistry, but I guess just the ring psychology that he showcased deserves, gives this more than just a star. So I'll give it a star and 3/4.
Haddix, anything you want to add to that?
Not particularly. I'll give it a star and 5/8. No, I'm just kidding.
Fucking Transylvania judge.
I also gave it 1 star, and I mean, not that it's necessarily the match, but it took way too long for this match to happen for how crappy it was. So I also give it 1 star.
All right. After this, you do see Billy Silverman, of course, the referee. He's seen chatting up with a disgruntled J.J. Dillon, who apparently not happy about what just transpired before that match. We come back from commercial. We've got Hollywood Hogan and Eric Bischoff heading to the ring, and this is the first sign that I noticed in the crowd. There's a lot of signs in the crowd, something you see now in the 90s. We're at this point in the wars where there's a lot of signs in the crowd. Wrestling's hot. And we saw the New World Order sign, so apparently not a fan of the NWO.
Was that before or after the OJ Did It sign?
This is before. The OJ Did It sign will come up later.
Okay.
And it is a shame. I just want to say that the Hendrix theme for when Hogan comes out not being allowed on the network because of music rights is just so disappointing because it's such a good song for him. And it also is weird when he's like playing air guitar to do just this the standard NWO music.
You know what's funny about that is I didn't know that was why. And when they were walking with like no music, I was like, God, it's so weird that they're just walking down to the ring like.
And he's just playing air guitar for nothing.
Yeah, I was like, this is like a very random thing.
Yeah, that's why. Hogan's going to grab a Sting mask on the way through and say that Sting's a crybaby and crying. Hogan's in total heel form here, and it's really fantastic. I think Hogan is just a great heel. Bischoff's going to get on the mic and refer to Hogan as the still WCW World Heavyweight Champion. He reiterates once again, nothing to worry about with the NWO, and that all the bikini-clad women love Hollywood Hogan and know that he's the true champ. And Hogan's going to end this promo here by saying he's too rich, too big, and too darn tan, which I don't know why that made me laugh because I'm like, what does the tan have to do with anything? But that's your.
In his defense, he is pretty tan.
He is pretty tan.
I mean, he's been tan since the 70s.
But now he's just too darn tan. Solid enough Bischoff Hogan promo here, and you've got two of your biggest heel stars now on the show, so good for them. After this, we're going to get our WCW Saturday Night promo, something that you and I, Kyle, have talked about a lot during the Monday Night Tours.
I hate it.
And now they've got some fancy computer graphics with like anatomy,
arm looking shit. Yeah.
And they mentioned that Booker T and Jericho are wrestling. They don't say if they're wrestling each other, who the lineup is, nothing. And Shivani says 25 years at this time slot and growing stronger out by the day, which I'm going to call bullshit now that Nitro's their number 1 show, Thunder's their number 2 show. Saturday night is going to just be a garbage show.
Saturday night is going to be in memoriam of the Cruiserweight tournament and later on Pepe.
After this, we're going to get the Professor Iron Mike Tenay with J.J. Dillon. J.J. Dillon's going to say that WCW is holding people accountable, which, of course, Nick Lambros said last Monday on Nitro. And he said, I saw Luger come out and use a chair on Randy Savage. And he said, before we get into fines and suspensions, Randy Savage is your winner. So Chris Adams, no longer in the trivia books as the first winner of a match on Thunder. So there's your...
I still want to say he still technically scored the first pinfall. He might have lost the match overall, but he still scored a pinfall and then got it reversed. And obviously, we all know what's going to happen from this. This is clearly going to turn into a Luger-Chris Adams rivalry feud because of this, taking away his first match, right? Right?
Right, yeah. Luger actually gets out here then, and he cuts a pretty good promo for Lex. He basically says for the last year and a half, WCW's been trashed by the NWO, and all of a sudden now the executives at WCW are going to do something. And he says, I don't care about the decision. Well, of course you don't care about the decision, Luger. The fact Chris Adams or Randy Savage won or lost means nothing to you, so obviously you don't care. And he says that, him, Sting, DDP, the Giant, they're going to do everything they want. And tonight he's going to get his revenge on Scott Norton. And J.J. Dillon just reiterates one more time, he gets no pleasure in fining and suspending and reversing decisions on his WCW guys, but he has to be fair and down the line. So that's that. Then we get another barn burner of a match. Louis Spicolli versus Rick Martel. Haddix, what'd you think about these two guys?
Dude, first off, I don't know what my boy Louis Spicolli was wearing when he went down to that ring. It was like a dad on a Saturday morning, like working out in the yard.
I know, he just got his a t-shirt on and some track pants or something.
He looked like a trashier Tommy Dreamer, which is already like Tommy Dreamer is about as jeans and t-shirt as you can get, like suit or like track pants, like breakaway pants, and a black shirt. What did his shirt say? The innovator of the Death Valley Driver? Is that what it said?
I don't think it said. It said it did say innovator of something.
I think of the innovator of the Death Valley Driver, and this is Rad Radford, right? This is what you told me.
This is Rad Radford, Kyle. Any of our listeners might remember Rad Radford as a WWF jobber in '95. So. And poor Louis Spicolli, I'm just going to say, he actually passes away in a couple of months from this showing. So,
Wow.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't mean to bring a downer, but
I'll say, yeah. Apparently is Rick Martel some great addition, because they were talking.
He was
I've never heard of this dude.
Yeah,
Rick Martel was a pretty good talent.
Yeah, Rick Martel was big in the late '80s, early '90s. He wrestled in the WWF as the model Rick Martel.
Former IC champion.
Yeah,
he was a pretty big deal.
Yeah, no, I don't know necessarily if he's out of his prime here, but
I honestly wouldn't be shocked if they don't put him in the Hall of Fame at some point. To be totally honest.
Yeah, I could see it. You're going to see Raven, the first scene of Raven and his flock, which at this point they're just calling the Raven's Nest. They're going to come and sit down in the crowd to watch the show. And that's really all they do. You see him one other time, they cut to him, and then that's going to be it. They don't do anything else during this program other than sit in the crowd. Rick Martel is going to win this with the Quebec Crab, which sparks a conversation how close the Quebec Crab is to the Lion Tamer. That's about it. I gave this a 1.5. It wasn't a very crisp match, and it wasn't very good either. It was your follow-up match to Savage and Chris Adams.
Yeah, I'd say a 1.5. Two guys I really didn't care too much about. They really were pushing as far as the commentator side. Rick Martel, if I recall, Rick Martel does nothing in WCW, so it was a completely inconsequential match. Not eventful, no story, no real direction, no purpose. So yeah, 1.5.
So I gave it 2, and I agree with Hoagie. I had no interest in this match whatsoever. And the only reason I gave it 2 is because based on how they looked when they came out, I thought this was going to be the worst match ever, and it was slightly better than that.
So don't judge a book by its cover, or Louis Spicolli by his track pants.
First. Yeah.
After this, we're going to get our 5th replay already of the show, and this is from Starrcade, where Kevin Nash actually real life no showed. So you got Scott Hall coming out here announcing that Nash will not be wrestling the Giant. And the Giant's going to come out. He's going to say Kevin Nash's name a lot in the promo. And he eventually says, I'm a patient man and I'll be in professional wrestling for a long time, which is very true because here we are 20 years later and he just quietly retired, but it's not been formally announced. So long career for Mr. Paul White. This segment's going to end with Hall getting attacked by the Giant. He's going to go to chokeslam him, but instead decides to do the jackknife powerbomb to him. So it was a nice little segment there.
So was Nash not there for? Did they know he wasn't going to be there or something?
He no-showed like that day or something. They didn't know. It was like that day. In real life, he just didn't. Yeah, he said he was, I don't know, had faked an injury. People think it was bullshit why he didn't come. So it's sort of, no one knows exactly why he no-showed it. After this, we're going to get a Tenzan versus Ohara match. We get the Professor Mike Tenay in for Lee Marshall here. And I got to appreciate it. Haddix, I don't know if you paid much attention to Mike Tenay calling here, but the reason they bring him on is he can call all these Japanese moves, and I quite enjoy Mike Tenay. I think he's very smart when it comes to knowing what every maneuver is called in a wrestling match. So I really appreciate they brought him out for this. Did you get any impressions on Mike Tenay here?
No, because kind of a little spoiler for my rating. I don't get into these like Japanese matches or lucha matches, which not that this is, but I don't know. It doesn't intrigue me at all. So I really wasn't paying that much attention, to be honest.
Okay. Well, Mike Tenay is going to list a ton of accomplishment about Tenzan on his way out. Basically, youngest guy to ever compete for the IWGP Championship. He has done this accolade and all this. And after he finishes it all up, Heenan goes, "He's right." Which just made me laugh. Like, Tenay just basically is that guy who like studied for a test and just absolutely nails it. And Heenan's the guy who just copied his report word for word. And then Heenan follows it up when they bring out Ohara by saying he's a favorite around the world, including Chicago, because they named an airport after him. Which just, Heenan was on fire tonight, I thought, just with his jokes. I was digging everything Heenan had to offer. There's not really much to say about this match. Eventually Tenzan is going to basically do a Michinoku driver and the diving headbutt, and he's going to win for Team NWO Japan. So I gave this 2 stars. I thought it was fine for what you had with 2 Japanese stars here. Nothing special. It just goes to show you that they're trying to bring in a lot of talent from, New World Japan, things like that, because they need more talent to do another 2-hour show here, or a 3-hour show tonight. But they're going to need to bring a lot more talent in to handle this, another wrestling show.
Yeah, I gave it a 1 3/4. One thing I've always given WCW the credit has been the international edge. Just something that WWE never really did. It kind of just adds that extra dimension to the program that they're doing, like cross promotions between 2 companies. I always thought that was kind of interesting and kind of a hats off to. I think it's more of a hats off to just to me, like just kind of giving kudos to just the business of professional wrestling, and letting people know that hey, there are other legitimate federations out there that aren't called the World Wrestling Federation. So for that, I always give them kudos for. The match itself, it was a lot of chops to the fucking shoulders and a headbutt at the end. It was okay for what it was. I also do agree, though. I love Tenay in commentary. I liked him when he was in TNA also, when he was the main guy there. So he was always interesting to listen. It was almost like he's the guy that you would want to listen to, like if wrestling was on radio.
Yeah, I agree with that. Haddix, your rating on the match?
I'll give it 1.499 stars. And kind of like what I said earlier, I just kind of didn't have much interest. So the match itself was decent, but with nothing catching my attention, it doesn't really do much for me.
Not your cup of tea is what you're saying.
Yeah.
After this, we're getting our 6th replay of the night. It's a replay from Nitro with Ric Flair, where he opens up by congratulating Sting on winning the world title and says that everybody's coming for the title, so look out. Then Bret Hart's going to come out and say he's the best there is, there was, and ever will be. And he says, if you got a problem with that, too bad. Flair says, if you think you're better than me, then say it. And Hart's going to say, if you got a problem, do something. And Flair's going to say, show me. So a little bit of Flair and Hart action on Nitro. Pretty good promo that we're getting replayed here. I'm starting to see a little bit of a feud between Hart and Flair, which we will discuss more when they come out later tonight on Thunder. That said, Flair's going to come out in his match with Chris Jericho, which I thought this was interesting because, obviously we know where Ric Flair's career already was at this point, but where it finishes, and then Jericho, of course, where he ends up going from here. It's interesting because I cannot see these two wrestling back at this point, and I think commentary mentions this is the first time they're going to be on, they're going to go head-to-head in their careers. Before the match starts, so Jericho's going to get on the mic, and he's going to apologize for his actions, saying he's embarrassed and ashamed. He's going to give David Penzer a new suit jacket, because apparently he must have destroyed it last time on Nitro. And the commentary team calls out that apparently this is not the first time Jericho has apologized for his actions and for throwing tantrums. So must be the kind of the story that we're getting with Jericho at this point. Then we're going to get Ric Flair coming out. In the crowd, we see a sign that says "Woo," which is spelled WHOOOOO. So I don't know about you guys.
Taken away and burned.
That says "Who" and not "Woo." But this is the way they build this is it's a 13-time world champion against 1997's former cruiserweight champion. So hell of a marquee matchup from that regard. And then the commentary team, in honor of Ric Flair's debut match on the debut show of Thunder, they try to woo and they go woo.
Was it not? Schiavone said that he didn't even do it.
Yeah,
it was just Lee and Bobby.
Schiavone even said that was so awful. For these two having very different styles of wrestling, Jericho being very high flying, kind of quick attacks, things like that, and Flair being more the sell, dirty tactics kind of thing. They both get a lot of those moves out in this match. And eventually, Flair is going to win with the figure four, which you don't see all the time. I gave this 2.5 stars. I was thoroughly, impressed or happy with the match. It was easily the best match of the night up to this point. They both kind of got their moves in, and Flair, who could easily have just squashed Jericho based on, where the two of them are in their careers at this point, let's, Jericho get his moves in. So I was quite happy with this match. What about you guys?
It's obvious that WCW is still undervaluing Jericho. He's still probably considered a mid-card talent. That this match could have been a lot better than it was. This was basically just Jericho. Yeah, he got his moves in, but he was basically jobbing to a guy who actually has a legitimate storyline with the feud with Bret Hart coming up at Sold Out. So I didn't see a part where Jericho would pull off an upset on Thunder.
Jericho does have a feud with David Penzer though, so I don't know why you're so quick to dismiss him.
I really hope that as we're watching this, that every week Jericho just hands Penzer a new jacket every week. But yeah, the match itself was actually very good. It could have been a great match versus what it ended up being. I also was kind of questioning how Flair just got away with a complete
blatant low blow.
Yeah, blatant low blow. I'm like, where's the ref? And the ref is over there in the corner just looking at something. Yeah. What the fuck? What were you looking at? You fucking pulling a Nick Patrick. But yeah, it was basically dirtiest player in the game routine in a figure four. So it was an entertaining match. I gave it a star and a quarter. I'm sorry, 2 stars and a quarter.
I was gonna say, damn, dude.
I know that.
2.25 stars.
I actually gave it 3.5, and I think there's multiple reasons why. One, because I know and love both of these wrestlers. But I actually think it's kind of cool that you get the. I feel like Jericho kind of carried that throwing tantrums even into the WWF when he was a heel there for a little while, and I kind of like that. I kind of like seeing him kind of have that persona early on.
Yeah, because at this point, you never knew the Jericho character until he showed up with The Rock on Raw, right?
Yeah, obviously I had heard of him, again in talks, but didn't know anything about him until he was Y2J and interrupted The Rock. But he
strap in, you're going to get some entertaining Jericho going forward.
I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed the classic Flair begging on his knees, and then I don't know if that was right before the low blow or not. I can't remember.
No, I think that was when he eye gouged him or something.
Oh, maybe that was. I don't know why I love when Ric Flair does that.
Oh, it's classic Flair.
He's a way better wrestler, but then he acts like he's begging for.
Yeah.
But so I gave it 3.5 stars for those reasons.
After the match is over, Tony Schiavone is going to say that this has got to be one of the biggest wins in Ric Flair's career. Ric Flair's a 13-time world champion. He just beat Chris Jericho, who at this point is only a former cruiserweight champion, on a random throwaway match on Thunder.
On the mid-card of the mid-card show.
I got to say that's a little bit of hyperbole on Tony Schiavone's part.
Agreed.
And then, of course, Jericho's going to throw a tantrum after this match. He's going to grab Pinzer's jacket again and throw it. Just made me laugh. So Jericho finds a way to just get his tantrum heat on still right back after the match. So for me, easily the best part of this show so far was this match, and and even what happened afterwards. After this, we get another match. It's going to be Ming, who's represented by Jimmy Hart, Kyle. So it looks like the Dungeon of Doom is still some form of stable at this point.
I think it's just I think now it's just the Faces of Fear or I forgot what Ming and Barbarian are kind of called.
Well, they were the Faces of Fear as a tag team. I don't know if
they were called something else together. I just can't remember exactly what it's called. But yeah, I think the actual dungeon's gone. Obviously, Sullivan has retired.
Right?
Now.
Yeah, Sullivan's just a booker at this point, and I don't know about all the other guys are probably dead. No, that's not true because the Yeti might be Reese at this point. So, but the Giant comes out to no music, I think, unless his music is like Hogan's and so many others, and that's a rights issue. But I don't think that's the case.
If it was a rights issue, they probably would just played
something else. Music. Yeah. And at this point, again, Heenan cracked me up because Schiavone's talking about Bret Hart and Ric Flair, and he says, Bret Hart, Heenan is like, he was like catching Bobby Heenan's attention in the middle of it. It was like, Bret Hart, Heenan, and Ric Flair signed for January 24th, and Heenan goes, I haven't signed for anything. Which just cracked me up again. This match is going to be pretty much a squash match. At one point, Jimmy Hart is actually tossed into Ming. The Giant's going to dominate, win with a choke slam. It was a little bit of a sloppy match because I think at one point the Giant Irish whips Ming into the corner and expects him to bounce out and come out for a back body drop, and Ming doesn't at first. So it was a little sloppy. I give it a star and a half. I was a little surprised that they just squashed Ming like this because Ming is supposed to be kind of billed as this monster.
At one point, he was billed as one of the guys that was the closest to ever beat Goldberg.
Yeah, and here he is just jobbing to the Giant like this. So I give it a star and a half.
I gave it 2.5 stars. Now hear me out on this because I'll say this: it's a nice breath of fresh air of how good the Giant is now. I mean, you and I were watching him in 95, 96. This is now 98. He's clearly gotten better. He looks a lot better in the ring. That back body drop, even though it was a little bit of a botch because Ming didn't, bounce off the turnbuckle and then go towards it. But when he actually took the back body drop, it was a thing of beauty. It was probably like the prettiest looking back body drop I've ever seen. And I always loved that Ming, even though Ming did job, when he was in the choke slam, like he was going to get slammed, he was still punching him and like trying to get out of it and kind of fighting through it. And the dude's like a 320-pound guy, and the Giant just picks him up like it's nothing and throws him down. And it's just like it's more of an athletic thing. It was a great match to show off the Giant. It's unfortunate that Ming kind of jobbed, but once again, this is the Giant we're talking about. He's much bigger on the card than Ming ever was.
He's like 7'4" and 500 pounds. Of course, he's gonna be bigger than the Giant or bigger than Ming.
Well, and once again, that's Eric Bischoff numbers. But yeah, I honestly really enjoyed the match for what it was.
I gave it a 2-star, and I actually agree with everything Hoagie said. I think my takeaway was how legit Paul White was back then. Although when he first came to WWE, he was pretty legit too. But the thing that I noticed the most was, I don't know if it was a year or two ago at a Royal Rumble or something, when he tried to kick somebody and he like basically kicked their knee because he couldn't lift his leg that high. He kicks Ming at one point and it's like at his chest. And I was like, oh, there you go. That's a little bit more athletic than.
He was incredibly athletic back then, and actually, he even now at his now he's retired just about. He got into really good shape. And he moves around well for a big guy, but he was, back in the day, he was a super freak at his size. After the match, I noticed the black and red NWO shirts in the crowd. And at one point they mentioned the Wolfpack. They're not officially the Wolfpack separate from the black and white NWO, but I didn't realize they had the red and black NWO shirts until the Wolfpack was formed. So I was a little surprised by this. Did you know that, Kyle?
Actually, the red and black NWO shirts were things that Hall and Nash only wore for the outsiders.
Right.
And also, if you notice that Hall had on his trunks on the back, it said Wolfpack, and he always wore red and black.
Right. Well, I knew they always wore the red and black, even with the outsiders, but I didn't know that they called themselves the Wolfpack or rocked the red and black shirts until I thought the split, but I guess not.
Well, I think I think that was what the hand gesture too. The too sweet was also supposed to be a wolf. That's a wolf head,
right? And but they all did the too sweet though. I mean, it wasn't just Hall and Nash doing that.
No. I agree, but I'm saying like the shirts did exist then. Yeah. It's just the only ones that ever wore it were Hall and Nash, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. After this, we're going to get one of the biggest rematches from Starrcade. Steve Mongo McMichael, Kyle, he is wrestling now. He's no longer a commentator, which, of course, he has been doing in our Monday Night Tours days. And he is wrestling Bill Goldberg. First name Bill, last name Goldberg.
Sounds like a guy that would do your taxes. I don't know if he's got a future in front of him. We'll see.
Haddix, you commented that you noticed that, Goldberg didn't have the entrance where he comes out, like, they knock on the door, he walks through security, all through all that. That's going to start later. At this point, it's going to be coming up soon. They're starting to mention that Heenan at one point says, I think Goldberg's undefeated, but I'm not positive. I have to fact check that. So they're not quite at the level where they're pushing that, the streak is a thing and he's undefeated and, all that. But they're thinking about it. So the Goldberg, obviously you could see the build of the character, but he's not quite to the level he's obviously going to get to. I actually thought this match was okay. Mongo starts with what you could call kind of a suicide dive through the ropes. He kind of like hops through the ropes and then dives from the apron. They brawl on the outside for a little bit. He actually gets a couple like chop block kind of moves in on Goldberg. Of course, eventually Mongo is going to take a spear and a jackhammer, and the match is over. But it wasn't a 30-second squash match, which a lot of Goldberg's matches are. And for two former football guys that I would say both can't wrestle, I gave it 2 stars. I thought it was fine. What about you guys?
It was better than I thought it would. When I saw the list of the matches and one of them was Mongo versus Goldberg, I was ready to put down like a half star on a match like this. So this is to me like the same thing with, I don't know, was Haddix who said Spicoli and Martel. Like I expected this to be utter dog shit, and this was actually not a bad. I would say it's in the middle of Goldberg's quality squash matches. So I'd say I'll give it like a star and 3/4.
You're killing me with these 3/4.
But what am I supposed to do? That's how you give them. You give them on quarter, half, and 3/4. All right, give it the program. But yeah, once again, Goldberg, as much as Mongo was putting out in the offense, Goldberg no-sold all of it. No matter what happened, he just got right back up. So it really mattered. But Mongo's a thick dude, and Goldberg is just throwing him around like it's nothing. So that's always an impressive thing to see. How
this guy calling Mongo thick over here,
dude. He's a big dude. All right,
that must have been what Deborah liked about him.
Nice. I see. I give it 2.5. I think same reasons you said, Kaiser. I thought it was pretty solid considering neither of them can wrestle, and I honestly thought that move you were talking about that McMichael did, like where he stepped out and then dove, he did that like pretty quickly. Like he did, I guess, step out of the ropes and jump.
No, but what you normally see when people do the suicide dive is they jump right. They
just jump right through.
Through everything. Which, I guess that's Mongo's not the type of person to do that. So it looked fine. I guess it just looked weird because I'm used to see it look more like a dive.
Yeah, the quickness that he did it at though was, I don't know. I was like, wow, that was impressive.
So
you're
saying
size.
that single move was 2.25 of your stars.
That game, yeah. I don't do quarters. I don't do that quarter stuff. All right, dude. All right, 2.5 stars.
Yeah, who do you think he is, man?
Yeah, come on, bro.
after this, we're going to get Marcus Bagwell with Conan representing the NWO. Of course, they've also got their bodyguard Vincent out there. And they're wrestling the tag team champions, the Steiner brothers, who are represented by Ted DiBiase, which all of this just seems weird to me in 98. The biggest thing that they're going to do is, at one point, Scott Steiner's going to get upset, and he's going to grab the referee and kind of shove him. There's no mention of it made in commentary, and the only reason I say that is because it plays into a storyline later, but nobody calls it out or talks about it. Scott Steiner eventually is going to win with the Frankensteiner, and Rick Steiner's at the top rope. He's ready for them to do a tag team top rope bulldog, but instead Scott's going to do the Frankensteiner. He's going to take the 3 count for himself. The commentary team makes a comment that they think there's some cracks forming between the Steiner brothers because this is the second time that Scott's kind of went in for business for himself and, kind of doing his own thing instead of him and Rick working as a team. I can't find my notes of what I rated this match, so I don't know. Do you guys know what you thought of it?
Anytime that I watch Scott Steiner, I think he is one of the most gifted overall athletic wrestlers. Even when he was one big giant chest muscle, and the fact that he had like a bicep on top of his bicep, or what looked like a malignant growth on top of his bicep. I mean, Rick Steiner is always fun to watch, but Scott Steiner has always been like just the absolute monster in the ring. And just watching a guy like that do a Frankensteiner from the top rope and how athletic he really is. And I think as he gets like a little bit older and becomes more of a singles wrestler, he moves away from doing stuff like that and becomes more of a ground and pound kind of guy. So it's a nice homage to go back to like some of the stuff that he used to do. And I also like that WCW still knows how to play subtlety a little bit with this, like where they're not outright saying, "Oh my God, why is Steiner and Rick not getting along?" It was just more like, "Oh, Steiner just did it by himself. He didn't need Rick. Okay, well, there's your winner." Like they kind of shrugged it off a little bit. They mentioned a little bit like, "Oh, that's a little weird," but they kind of let it go. Like that's what I like. That's the stuff that you and I, Kaiser, I think we've always yelled at WCW about, is that they never are subtle about anything. It's like Bischoff totally explains everything, and now they're being a little bit more subtle. And I just like seeing a storyline that doesn't involve the NWO. So seeing like, okay, there's a little dissension. Maybe there might be dissension in the Steiner brothers. That's a nice little extra story. I gave it 2.25 stars.
I found it in my notes. I gave it 2 stars. Haddix, what about you?
I gave it 2 stars as well. I always thought Scott Steiner's biceps were gross looking. I don't know why.
I did too.
They always
because they are gross looking.
they pretty much are gross.
They're so weird. But you and I talked about this, Kaiser. Unless I'm wrong, Scott Steiner joins the NWO at some point, right?
Dude,
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert,
yes.
Man. Come on.
Yes. That's the only Scott Steiner I know. I was talking to Kaiser about this. I didn't even know he was in a tag team. I didn't even know
which is just egregious.
Yeah. Didn't even know.
He's like him and for years they wanted to split him and Rick up, and they did not want to split up. They wanted to be basically a tag team forever.
For life.
There you go. But yeah, it's not going to be too much longer. You'll eventually see him split up. I'm just not sure when it happens.
So, Haddix, you only remember Big Papa Pump.
That's right.
Basically.
And his freaks.
And his nasty biceps.
And his freaks.
After this, we get a quick Slim Jim promo. And then the commentary team's going to mention that there are some fines coming to Mr. Scott Steiner, not for those biceps, not for the steroids, but for pushing the referee. So Schiavone apologizes that he didn't call it out in commentary at the time, probably because nobody told him that he was supposed to mention it, and he just didn't pay any attention to it. Then we're going to get our 7th replay of the night. This is our Starrcade matchup. This is Eric Bischoff versus Larry Zbyszko, the battle for WCW Monday Nitro. If Bischoff wins it, the NWO is going to run and own Nitro. If Zbyszko wins it, WCW keeps control of it. Which I always thought was weird. Like, if the NWO won Nitro, like, who's the NWO going to fight if there's no WCW people on the show? But
I think the whole point was that it's not that WCW has to go; it's just that NWO is in control of it.
Yeah, they just get to.
They basically just get to beat up on the WCW.
So what's happening behind the scenes is now just going to be in front of the scenes as well, because you have Hall and Nash and Hogan calling the shots. Special guest referee, of course, Bret Hart. Bret Hart coming fairly recently, coming off of the Montreal Screwjob. and the whole Bret Hart leaving the WWF. So to have him in this high-profile match kind of makes sense. You almost wish he could be wrestling instead of just refereeing a match with Bischoff and Zbyszko, but still a big storyline match to have Hart in there. You're going to have Mike Tenay, Tony Schiavone, and Dusty Rhodes, so we got another combination of commentators for this match. And I got to say, Larry Zbyszko is over with this crowd. They are big Larry Zbyszko fans. And
I'm a big Larry Zbyszko. I love Larry Zbyszko.
Zbyszko's going to come out to the Monday Nitro theme, which kind of made me laugh.
already kind of pandering.
And the match was kind of interesting at first because every time Larry Zbyszko kind of had control, where it looks like he might kind of be pushing the limits on the holds and things like that, Bret Hart's going to stop him, breaking hold, things like that. And it commentary kind of points it out, like wondering maybe Bret Hart is siding with Bischoff. Commentary, though, they're stressing the entire time during the match of just how important it is that Larry Zbyszko wins. Their jobs could be on the line. We can't let the NWO, who's basically been pushing us around for the last year or so, year and a half, that it's time that we get a victory for WCW. Hall, who of course who came out with Bischoff, he's going to kind of put something like a metal piece or something in Bischoff. I thought it was in his glove, but I guess it was in his foot or something.
It was in his boot. Yeah,
it was in his foot pad, his sparring pad.
Because then Bischoff goes to
odd that he had those,
and then Bischoff goes to kick Zbyszko, and that metal piece goes flying out of the ring. Which
that was a lawsuit avoided.
So Larry Zbyszko's knocked out. Bret Hart is not a fan of this. He's going to punch Bischoff. So all of a sudden the crowd goes nuts. They realize Bret Hart is not going to be an NWO member. Then in comes Scott Hall. He's going to get attacked by Bret Hart. Eventually Hart's going to put the sharpshooter on him. Larry's going to choke Eric Bischoff and be declared the winner, because why not? There was never as far as I knew, a tap out, a count, anything. But Larry Zbyszko, your winner, hand raised by Mr. Bret Hart. And Tony Schiavone says the NWO are losers, as he quotes his favorite 90s comedy. I guess we can rate the match. I gave it a star and 3/4. I kind of thought the ending was just shit, to be honest.
I gave it a star and a half. I will say this: I always enjoyed playing Eric Bischoff in the video games, just because he has no grappling moves; he just does punches and kicks. So I just thought that was just a fun way to knock somebody out. The match in itself, Zbyszko's totally over with the crowd. This probably got even a bigger pop than Sting and Hogan. I think my only real problem with this is that this is for WCW Nitro, for NWO to have control of the flagship show, and the only person you bring down, and no offense to him, he's my favorite wrestler of all time, Scott Hall, but you would think the whole, as much as NWO is nothing but a swarm of goons, where is everybody else that would be there to stop this? It's Bischoff. He's not a wrestler. He should have everybody at ringside.
You would think so.
I gave it 2 stars, and I think it was because I had no idea what was going to happen. I didn't know if Bret started out heel or not. In WCW, I have absolutely no idea. So I think that part of it kind of had me intrigued. But other than that, I think it's the exact match you would expect between Bischoff and Zbyszko. So nothing special. The only thing that I liked was the not knowing what was going to happen part.
Yeah. To be honest, Bret Hart, nothing really happens with Bret Hart for another 2 years in that company, to be honest.
Eventually gets his brains kicked in by Goldberg, and that's his career. So, after this, we're going to get Mike Tenay interviewing Mr. Larry Zbyszko. Zbyszko and Scott Hall are going to have a match at the upcoming sold-out pay-per-view, and Zbyszko basically says this is 10 years in the making. Tells about how Scott Hall couldn't beat Zbyszko back in the day for the title when Zbyszko was the champion, and tells Scott Hall not to underestimate me because he wrestled in front of emperors and Japans and in front of pharaohs and kings and presidents of Japan or something like that. He mentions Japan multiple times and says that he was basically dominating around the world while Scott Hall was just picking and eating his boogers in grade school. Pretty solid promo here by Larry Zbyszko.
I thought it was pretty good.
I just like the shirt he was wearing. It reminded me of a young Josh Kaiser in his freshman and sophomore years. That would be a shirt you would have rocked. That orange silk shirt.
Oh,
with flames on it.
Hey, it's classic. It's good shit.
I feel like Kaiser had a shirt like that.
He did have a shirt that.
After this, we're going to get our paid for by the NWO, which I always kind of appreciated that the NWO would, they're paid for sponsor. And, when you get a badass group of villains like Hall and Nash and Hogan, and they're going to sell merchandise, well, you got to think of cool shit like, sunglasses and T-shirts and maybe some leather jackets or boots. Nope, just collectible pins. So, if you need your collectible NWO pins, you know where to get them. After this, we're gonna get our 8th replay of the night. It is Ray Traylor getting attacked by the NWO back in fucking September. It is January, and we're showing a storyline of Ray Traylor getting attacked in September. Of course, he's getting his back spray painted by the NWO. Apparently, this is when the NWO turned their backs on Ray Traylor, because I guess he was an NWO member for a period of time, which I did not know. I'm going to be honest. This was news to me. I watched the initial...
I think he wanted to be in the NWO, and they kept on teasing that he would be in the NWO, and then they end up just turning their back on him. I don't think he actually ever became a member.
Yeah, well, at this point, at least he got kicked out, and now, Kyle... From September to January, Ray Traylor wants his revenge. It's him versus Scott Hall. And the match is interesting. It starts out fine enough, and then Ray Traylor is going to bear hug Scott Hall, and he's going to flail around, which causes the ref to get hit in the face. Scott Hall is going to use his tag team championship. No, not tag team championship. Yes, tag team championship?
It was his fake tag championship, yeah.
Fake tag. Yeah, as I said that, I'm like, he had a belt. But the Steiner brothers are champions, so I was trying to figure out what was going on. Okay, that's what it is.
Yeah, him and Nash walked around with like you can buy it like a Toys R Us. By the way, rest in peace, Toys R Us.
Well, he's going to use that fake championship to knock out Ray Traylor for the 3 count, which even the commentary thought it was a 3 count. But Traylor's going to kick out, maybe because it was a fake title. If it was a real title, it would have held him down for 3. But Traylor's going to kick out at that 2.5 count. Scott Hall's going to do a bulldog at one point. Traylor's going to kick out again. And Hall's going to go, he's done with this. He's going to get a real steel chair this time. But out comes Mr. Larry Zbyszko to stop Hall from doing that. Hall's going to get back in the ring. Zbyszko's going to get on the apron, distract Hall. Hall's going to turn around for the Traylor spike. And Ray Traylor going to get the 3 count here. I was surprised by the finish. I gave it 2 stars. It was okay.
I gave it 2 1/4. This is I think it's my 3rd straight 2 1/4. But I always do 2 1/4 because I think it was a little bit better than okay. I was very surprised that Ray Traylor got the win. But the moment that I saw Larry Zbyszko show up, I'm like, fuck, Scott, you're gonna lose. But I thought the match overall was okay. I'd always laugh. I always look at the psychology of the ref, where if this was like a valet or a manager who's jumping up on the apron, the ref would have been in their face, hey, get down off the thing. What are you doing? You're not supposed to be on the apron. Kind of like a distraction. You know what I mean? In this case, Zbyszko's on the apron, and the ref's like, fuck it, I'll allow it. Doesn't give a shit. Just whatever. Let him blatantly be a distraction to a legitimate match, and let it be. That was the only thing I got kind of mad about. And now because of that, it's now 1 3/4 star. Fuck this match. 1 3/4.
I give it a 2 stars as well. I thought it was okay, just like you guys. My boy, Big Boss Man, though. That's all I can say about that. It's my boy, Big Boss Man.
That is your big boy, Big Boss Man.
Big boy, Boss Man.
After this, we're going to get our Juventud Guerrera versus Ultimo Dragon for the Cruiserweight Championship. And Kyle, this is when we see the OJ Did It sign. And I had to, it's January of 98. Of course, the OJ trial happened back in 94. And I'm like, well, maybe...
No. It was 90. No, the verdict was fall of 95.
Well, yeah, the verdict came in fall of 95. It started in the fall of 94. But I was like, I need to look it up just on the off chance that maybe I'm forgetting something and the verdict came in 98 for some reason. Nope, it was just a really not topical sign that was posted in there. Juventud Guerrera, though, of course, he beat Psychosis on Nitro this past week for this championship match opportunity on Thunder. The commentary team, of course, going to spend the first half of the match apologizing for not calling out Scott Steiner's attack on the referee. There's a $5,000 fine for Scott Steiner coming. And they said they'll find out on Saturday whether it's going to stick because they're going to have to review the footage. Apparently, they just can't go look at the tape that happened, on the show 30 minutes ago to find out if he actually pushed him or not.
They made a mention of how they're not going to have the replay available until Saturday. I'm like, you have replays of everything else.
Right.
How do you not have a replay of this, you idiots?
This, for a high-flying match for these two, who are both pretty talented and could put on a hell of a match, it was really sloppy, I thought. And at one point, Ultimo Dragon, he's going to go for a moonsault, and Juventud does not catch him and doesn't, he just pretty much falls. It just looked ugly. Juvi is eventually going to do his Juvi driver, and he does his 450 splash. He is your new Cruiserweight Championship. This was 2 stars for me. Could have been a lot better for these two. It wasn't, but it wasn't awful either.
I'm a huge Ultimo Dragon shipper. He's always been one of my favorite
shipper. Who are you shipping him with? Just in general?
Just in general. He's always had the coolest moves, but he didn't show any of them. I think you and I one time watched him and Rey Mysterio in a match that Ultimo barely won. I think it was in 94, 95 or I can't remember how far back it was. Actually, it might have been 97. No more I think about it. But it was at the Great American Bash or something like that. And they had what I thought was one of the best matches I've ever seen as far as a cruiserweight match. So yeah, this felt phoned in overall. But it was good to have a title change hands on the first Thunder.
I agree with you there. I'm glad there was a title change on this show. I thought it was good to do that.
Right, because I always looked at it from the perspective of I remember the first SmackDown, and I remember just how much they stacked the deck on that card, and how it was a much the first episode of SmackDown was such an exciting card, and this has already been kind of trash. But this was actually at least something happened where it would actually change the landscape of something. In this case, the cruiserweights. I gave it 2 1/4. Once again, totally could have been a better match. I think it was phoned in a little bit, but you got a new cruiserweight champion.
I'm going to give it 2, kind of what I hinted at earlier. I'm not a huge fan of cruiserweight stuff. Not that I think it's bad, because some of the stuff they do is nuts, but it just never really, it's not my cup of tea. But I always love saying Juventud. I don't know why I like that name, but that's
it's a great name.
I'm going to name him Juventud Haddix.
I'm curious to see if you're going to change your tune on luchador and this style wrestling as we get into more WCW matches, because you were never really exposed to the good luchador matches in this era, and I think you're going to see some of that going forward here. So I'm curious if 3 months from now of us discussing Thunder matches, that you might be like, you know what? That Psychosis El Dandy match was a hell of a match, and I'm really digging it.
I don't think I'll hear him say that, but I know that when Billy Kidman starts getting into his stride, I mean, all of his matches always seem to be the not only were they good matches, but they were always really suspenseful too, because it just felt like either one of them could have won the match.
Right. After this, we're going to get the Mr. Iron Mike Tenay interviewing Bret the Hitman Hart. Bret Hart's music is fucking trash. It is awful. Awful. I don't know what stock fucking rock music they picked for this, but it is terrible. And they mentioned once again, it's official at Snickers sold out, which always makes me sound funny to me that they mentioned Snickers, which, by the way, Snickers sponsors so many wrestling pay-per-views throughout the years. They're this year's WrestleMania sponsor, and it just amazes. They just invested in wrestling forever.
Them and Skittles and milk.
Hart's going to mention that he's a former 5-time WWF champion, and he's here in the WCW to prove it all again. Out comes the Flair, and he says, "I'm the Nature Boy, you're Bret Hart, and we're wrestling." So 3 very basic statements from Ric Flair, but
all valid points.
Yeah. He says, everyone told Flair. Everyone says to Flair the past week, I can't wait till you get Bret Hart in the ring again. I want him to say that. I want to see him say that to your face again. So Bret basically
Basically
says
the same promo as Nitro.
Yeah, very similar. Bret's gonna say his line that I'm the best there is, was, and ever will be. Flair basically says you're the stupidest son of a bitch ever for believing that you're the best there was and is. And he says, I was beating the best while you were in the front row as a kid. And Hart's going to eventually end this segment by saying, I guess to be the man, I have to beat the man. They kind of get a little pushy in each other's face. But overall, solid promo for these two going back and forth. Haddix, I know you know both of these. What do you think about it?
So Bret was kind of before my time in WWE, so I didn't see a lot of him. But I always felt in the stuff I did see, he's never been the best at promos. Do you guys agree with that, or is that like just something that I just haven't seen enough of his promos? He's just real flat.
At best, he's okay.
I think he can get I think he can get a good promo once in a while.
And maybe that's it. I just feel like Flair comes out with such like enthusiasm and you believe him that he's like.
Oh, Flair's definitely more into it. I would say Hart's best promos are when he's a heel. I don't think Flair's face promos are good at all.
I think my big problem though with this promo has been, or this match, is that everyone seems to be pushing this as this is like a almost like a once in a lifetime, or like, oh, this is a dream match. Everyone's always wanted to know who would win between Hart and Flair, as if this match never actually happened. Hart's first WWF Heavyweight Championship win was against Ric Flair in the WWF. So they've wrestled before, and he beat him. And this is probably when they were both more, I mean, maybe not Hart being in his prime, but he was as good as he ever was in 92. And this is Flair in 92, which is already past his prime, but now we're talking 98, which is now way past his prime, which is, it's just like one of those things, like, do they just not recognize the fact that he has a winning record against the Nature Boy?
Yeah, I think they're just, they're obviously not calling back to their WWF history.
All right, just like I said, it just makes it seem like they're talking to each other as if you don't know if you could ever beat me. We've never, like, almost like we've never fought before. We'll have to find out once and for all when we finally get in the ring against each other. And I just wanted Bret to be like, 6 years ago I beat you for the World Wrestling Federation title, so I really want him to say that.
Yeah,
like, you were the guy that got me my first title. So
and
thanks, buddy.
I think if this match happened a couple years later, where people are overall much smarter wrestling fans, and the internet's more relevant and around, and people are using it, I think they might play off that. But for now, they're like, maybe people just don't realize the two have wrestled before. After this, though, we're going to get Scott Norton representing the NWO versus Lex Luger. Of course, this is the match Lex alluded to earlier in the night. The match is going to start. Scott Norton's going to push the ref out of the way to attack Luger. No fine comes to Scott Norton for that. I don't know. I thought, he laid his hands on the referee. Something should have happened, but nothing did. About 35 seconds later, Buff Bagwell shows up, and he's going to get punched in the face by Luger. Luger's going to get a shoulder breaker from Scott Norton, which Lex is going to kick out of, which causes the commentary team to lose their minds. And a couple clotheslines later, we get a torture rack. Scott Norton is going to tap. Lex Luger's your winner. Buff Bagwell is going to get into the ring. He's going to get a torture rack. He's going to get thrown into Randy Savage, who just came out of nowhere. Randy Savage is going to drop a chair. A little chaos. I give this a 1.25 stars. I thought the match was quick and chaotic, and I really didn't understand what was with all the chaos.
I didn't understand what the purpose of this match kind of was. I mean, once again, just another guy with the NWO and showcasing Lex Luger. I agree. I gave it a 1.5 stars. It was really quick. I think the only thing that was of note is that Scott Norton performed his finishing move on Luger legit, and he kicked out of it like he's fucking Hogan, which he's not. And I always thought Scott Norton's finisher was a powerbomb. And so when he hit it with the shoulder breaker, I'm like, first of all, kudos that someone's using a shoulder breaker. I hardly ever see that move. But yeah, it was just kind of a strange thing for Luger to decide just to kick out of someone's finisher. That's almost like a cardinal sin. And he's an old school wrestler. Usually you don't kick out of something like that unless there's a reason for it. There doesn't seem like there would have been a reason. And if he's supposed to go over, then Norton shouldn't have done his finisher to him. So I just felt like just for the flow of the match and the decisions that were made during the match, it just made no sense. Glad Buff was there. Always loved him. I always felt he had the stuff. 1.5 stars.
I think I basically just kind of agree with everything you guys said. So I gave it 1 star. It seemed real chaotic and pointless.
Yep. We go back to the commentary team. They're discussing Sting and Hogan and what happened at Starrcade. And then we get our 9th replay of the night. And this, of course, is the Hogan versus Sting match at Starrcade. This was the big build-up. It's 1997. Hogan has been the, champion. The NWO is dominating everything, and Sting is wrestling in his first match in a long time. He's been hiding out. He hasn't spoken. People weren't sure whether he represented WCW or the NWO. He's painted in black and white. He looks like the Crow. Here's the match, and Hogan's going to land a leg drop, and 1, 2, 3. Hogan's going to be your reigning defending champion, I think, but apparently there's some controversy. Bret Hart says, he's done with this bullshit. Nick Patrick can't be doing those quick counts. Got to be honest, it was not a quick count at all. Hart's going to roll Hogan back in. Buff Bagwell's going to come out. Scott Norton's going to come out. Sting's going to clear them out. Eventually locks on the Scorpion Deathlock. Nods to Bret Hart because, hey, I'm using your finisher, basically. Hogan's going to tap. The WCW is going to mob the ring as all of them are in there, including Mr. El Dandy. Sting apparently is the world champion here, and in case you guys were confused by that, it was supposed to be a fast count by Nick Patrick. He was supposed to do 1, 2, 3 real quick, and that was going to be when Hart came in and said, that was a quick count, that's bullshit, we're restarting the match. There's rumor that somebody told Nick Patrick to do a standard slow count. They think it might have been Hogan, this and that. It really took away from this match. This is a huge build-up, and now it looks like Hogan technically just won with a standard 3 count because it did not look fast, and they're going to try to play it off like it's a fast count. What did you guys think about this?
It was a horrible ending to already a very chaotic and kind of it was a weird match just because of the fact that Sting had been gone for over basically a year out of competition, and it's also very synonymous to just kind of how bad the execution, especially when you have someone like the excellence of execution being there, you would think things would be done correctly. But the problem, like I said, I think the problem that we all kind of had with this was how can you sell if you screw up? For example, someone screwed up. Whether it was Nick Patrick or the person who told him, he does a slow count or a regular 3 count, it's over. To me, that's like if I was like Vince, or if I was the guy in the headset who was in charge going, look, fuck, we got to run with it. Like, because I'd rather that be it and just let Hogan win and let's move on and let's pick up the pieces and move forward, and then we'll get Sting later. Because obviously someone fucked up. Someone's getting fired for this. Instead, it's like they just went ahead with the whole story that now makes no fucking sense. And it was really, really fucking weird. Everybody like jumping into the ring at the end. It was once again. What happened was with this being so bad, it took like 2-3 weeks of everybody in the back, like as far as talent and the writers, to try to write themselves out of the hole that they dug themselves into.
Haddix, what did you think about all this?
I don't know if you guys had prior knowledge to Starrcade going into this, but I didn't. So the whole episode, they're talking about, this fast count, Hogan got screwed. Like when Hogan walks down playing the air guitar to no music, and he's like, I'm still the champion. So I'm like, okay. And so this replay, I'm like, I don't know what happened. I don't know where. Like, I thought I was like missing something because I was like, he just counts and he wins. So yeah, I thought it was all, like Hoagie said, very weird, and the fact that they just went with it was even weirder.
Yeah, definitely was. So after all this happens, they commentary is going to talk more about. They said there's a near riot that happened in Baltimore. And we got more footage that you've never seen that we're going to show you at some point. And then they show it to you. And this, of course, is at Nitro. Hogan's going to go for the leg drop. Sting's going to move. Sting's going to hit a stinger splash on Hogan, but Randy Anderson's there. He also catches the stinger splash. Hogan's going to put on the Scorpion Deathlock. Hogan's tapping, but Randy Anderson knocked out so no one sees it. Out comes Nick Patrick. He's going to distract Sting. Hogan's going to curl him up. Sting's going to get pinned for a 3 count. And, the NWO, have they won? Is Hogan your champion? Turns out Sting's going to throw Nick Patrick out of the ring. Another Scorpion Deathlock. Randy Anderson is there now. He's going to see Hogan tap out. He's going to award him the winner. Out comes J.J. Dillon. He's going to grab the belt to award it to Sting, but Bischoff's going to come in. He's going to take the belt from J.J. Dillon. He kind of kicks J.J. Dillon. Sting and Hogan go at it. Out comes the rest of NWO. And then Bret Hart's going to run out to help save WCW, and then as is a lot of the WCW roster. This is the chaos they're talking about. And if you're watching Nitro, this show went off the air before like any of these pins and tap outs and everything happened. So you literally fucking missed how this happened. Just a totally chaotic mess right now. And if it couldn't have gone any worse after Starrcade, they followed up on Nitro by making it a worse situation.
Right, and then once again, it's always the pitfalls of live television. Like when Bischoff was at the commentary booth, he was always like, "Hey, we're going overtime." The C stands for commitment. Apparently, that C stands for something else now, because if they're going overtime, they can't apparently afford. They're the biggest show on that company, and yet they can't go past a little bit. Like, I'm sure they could get.
Well, for all you know, they could have already been 10 minutes after or past or something.
You could be right, but it's just if they're going to try and write something, first of all, don't go long. I mean, just try not to. And even if you're going to go long a little bit, like, you need to make sure you have your times corrected. If you're going to push the storyline that's as big as the world title, like, you can't just turn that off. It's kind of like, it's almost like if like, let's say like Goldberg and DDP were wrestling for the world title, and all of a sudden they cut the feed during the match. Like, I mean, that would be egregious, and obviously would have never happened. But,
right, of course not.
Right.
Haddix, did this match bring any more clarity to what was going on with these two?
No.
So thankfully, we're going to get our segment now. Mike Tenay in the ring. He's got J.J. Dillon out there to, bring some clarity to everything that's happening. What is going on? Who is your champion? You've got Sting. You've got the fast count. That wasn't a fast count. You got the tap out. Then you got the chaos riot on Nitro. So J.J. Dillon gets in there and says, everyone has an opinion on what happened, but the executive committee has the final decision here. He says, first, let's bring out the Hogan, in the NWO. They're all going to come out. Then he says, I need Sting out here, the current champion Sting, and I need you to bring out the title. So, and then he's talking to both of them. He says, we looked at the footage. We've gone forwards and backwards. We've paused it, still framed, the whole ordeal. And we're going to vacate the title because we cannot just make a clear decision. I got to say, they're a terrible committee because there was a 3 count. Hogan is your champion based off the bullshit Nick Patrick count. It was not a fast count. Just really bad all around. Of course, I understand for storyline purposes why they made that the case. Sting's going to throw the belt down, and he's going to say, J.J. Dillon, that you have no guts. And he tells Hogan that he's a dead man, and they cut to commercial. This, in case you guys don't realize that, Sting has not spoken in months, like 6, 8, 9 months, maybe a year, since Sting has cut any promo, said anything. He has been a mysterious enigma, hiding in the rafters, painted face, the whole ordeal. He finally speaks for the first time. It's on Thunder. It's a throwaway, JJ, you've got no guts. Hogan, you're a dead man. He walks away. They cut to commercial. Nearly seconds later, they don't even let it dawn on anyone that he fucking spoke. This is amazing to me that it just played out this way. I think I'm not sure they could have botched the Sting return to the ring and everything as badly and poorly as they had.
it got buried. It was one of the worst buryings of a storyline. Like this could have had so much more legs than what it did. And then we're gonna find out like 4 or 5 years later he's gonna join the fucking Wolfpack and be cool Sting again with red face paint. So it's like this doesn't even last as far as him being being this like crow, kind of like dangerous guy. And also, have you noticed? I mean, you've noticed obviously, Kaiser, because we've talked about it. But whenever he gets mad at somebody, he like threatens murder. Sting's a very, very homicidal guy.
Yes, he is very homicidal. But the only storyline that might have been buried further, Kyle, was who is Craig Pittman's manager.
Did we ever find out?
We did not.
We need to find out before this is all said and done.
We do. Haddix, what did you think about all this chaos and the J.J. Dillon decision here?
I think it's back to what you said. I don't know how. It's back to what you said and what Hoagie said. They needed to, at this point, just say, all right, we fucked this up. Let's just give it to Hogan. We'll rewrite, the next few weeks to kind of like come up with something new. And instead, they say, we're going to vacate the like, it doesn't make any sense. I don't get how anyone said, you know what, this is okay. Let's just go with this. Like, it's just horrible writing.
And the crazy thing is Hogan is part of his own writing. He does his own. He's in charge of a lot of the shit that goes on with the show. You would think he would be totally on board with getting the title back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So at this point, like, vacating the title, A, was a dumb move. B, seems like something that Hogan wouldn't even have signed off on. And just be like, just give me the belt. We'll figure it out. Like, having a vacated title creates no heat. It creates no. Flair just had a promo just on that Monday congratulating Sting and how, like, he's going to be a marked man because everyone's going to be going after that title. And now nobody has the fucking title.
Yeah, just absolute chaos. So I guess it's their way of trying to push a new match for Sold Out, but I just don't get it. We're going to come back for our main event match now. Finally, the show is nearing an end. You've got I guess the United States Championship might be on the line. They don't really say for certain or not.
They said at the beginning it was. They did.
So you got Diamond Dallas Page. He's your U.S. champion. He's defending it, I think, against Kevin Nash, who is accompanied to the ring by Hulk Hogan, which already leads me to believe that maybe some shenanigans are going to take place. And we get another sign in the crowd. This one says it's Kevin Nash country, but is written in Donkey Kong country font, which is the only reason I liked it. And then you got Shivani who says, who starts talking about TBS. We're the people that let, if the Atlanta Hawks go into overtime, we're there watching it. If the Braves are going into extra innings, we're staying to watch it. And just like that, tonight, we're going to go as late as we have to for Thunder. If this match goes on, we're going to keep showing it. And Heenan makes the comment, we might be doing the weather in the traffic in the morning. And they said, well, if that's what we got to do, that's what we got to do. It's the only reason I say that is because it's going to get real funny here in a minute. Nash, this is Nash's first match since his quote unquote knee injury and why he didn't wrestle at Starrcade. DDP, they mentioned, is the United States champion because he beat Kurt Hennig. I don't know how recently it was, but he is your U.S. champ from that. They do mention that Nash is part of the Wolfpack at this point, so to our discussion earlier. It starts out a little back and forth. Eventually, Nash is going to gain control. But DDP, of course, diamond cutter out of nowhere. He's just about to land it when Hogan punches him in the face. There's your DQ finish. And then out, as NWO starts to attack DDP, out comes the Giant, and Shivani says, that's it, guys, we're desperately out of time. Then the Giant's going to get into the ring. They're going to go face-to-face, and he says, fans, I'm sorry, we're out of time. We're desperately out of time. And then they're going to push around, and he says, we have maybe 20 or 30 more seconds. And then everyone's getting ready to fight again, and they said, I think we're done. We'll see you later. Sorry. And then at some point, the show does end.
It was almost like the wrestlers were hearing Shivani, like, we're out of time. We probably shouldn't get in. Okay, we're gonna go back to fighting. Wait, we're out of time. Like, fuck. Like, it literally seemed like they all had like devices where they're hearing Shivani.
They all knew. Yeah, somebody did not have the timing down at all right there. It made Shivani look like an idiot. This was a star and 3/4. The match wasn't very good. The ending for the production of a live show and the way they closed out was bad. Just a bad way to end the first Thunder for me.
I gave it a 1.5 stars. It was just a fist fest. It was, Nash wasn't really moving all that much. DDP really couldn't do anything with him. I really wish that they would have had a clean win, whether it was DDP like retaining or Nash or something. But the fact that it was just the match ended with Hogan just punching DDP in the face and that was it. Like that, I would have been fine with a DQ if it at least had a little bit more thought than that. It was, and also if I was Nash going for the U.S. title, I'd be pretty pissed off that like Hogan just decided to come in and just like ruin my main event U.S. championship match. And I actually almost thought to myself, like, oh, maybe the reason why Hogan's coming down here is once again moving forward, there will be dissension between Nash and Hogan. And I thought maybe this is where it starts. Like maybe, okay, he's going for the title. Hogan decides that he feels like he wants to just beat up on DDP and cause a DQ. Nash gets pissed, like, hey, bro, that was my title match. What's the deal? And then Hogan's like, ooh, yes, or stealing all of Macho Man's fucking sayings. And then there might be some, jawing back and forth. But instead, like you said, chaotic, stupid ending, really not the best way of ending the show.
I gave this a 1 star, and it is because I absolutely could not stand how much he kept saying the time that was left at the end. I thought that was like the dumbest thing. It annoyed me so much. Not that I would have rated it that much higher without that, but that just like pissed me off.
On top of the fact that it was just bad timing on their part, they literally opened the match by saying that we will go as long as possible.
Yeah.
For them to say we're desperately out of time multiple times makes them look bad.
So let me ask you this: is this one like the Giant joins the NWO? Is that what we're getting into here?
No, not yet. The Giant will eventually join him, but he's wrestling Kevin Nash at Sold Out. So
okay. I figured with this cliffhanger that they left us on here that's what was going to happen. Because again, I knew he joined it at some point, but I don't know when. So
right. That said, that's going to be our show. Haddix, let's start with you. What was your overall thoughts on this debut edition of Thunder? So
I think we've kind of all had this talk, and even in the past, you hear how just shitty Thunder is, and it's a horrible show. And I think I had that mentality going in. So it's kind of back to my Spicoli fight? Spicoli fight. With that mentality, I actually thought it was better than I thought it was going to be. It performed better than I thought it was going to be. There was a lot about it I didn't like, but I think that was just kind of the product back then. It's hard for me not to compare to the Attitude Era, but like I said, I think overall it was better than I thought, and I'm kind of interested to see once we get into the groove of it how crappy it gets, or if people are right when they tell me it was a crappy show.
I'm just curious as to does it keep going to be 3 hours? I've always remembered this being a 2-hour show.
No, it goes 2 hours after this. This was just a debut thing they did. But this did cause them. It did so well for 3 hours that this turns Nitro into a 3-hour show going forward.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. But the once again, you mentioned it before, Kaiser. They're in the middle of like a recruitment freeze. Like Thunder is completely like lacking in actual development costs. Where Bischoff is, got to basically they're creating another television show, but not like getting the funding that he needs in order to really get the production that warrants a second show. And the whole idea of like overexposing all the people on the show, the extra physical exertion, it's like. A lot of these guys are not going to want to wrestle on Nitro and then go wrestle 4 days later or 3 days later on Thunder, and just once again it's gonna lead to a talent crisis. I think that was the one thing that I always thought about. Obviously now that I kind of think about why Thunder ever existed. Thunder only existed because it was basically Ted Turner and the higher ups thinking that this would be like the final nail in the coffin to Vince and the WWF, that they can have 2 highly successful shows, that would be it. Like that would be, but really all that actually did was it made like a kind of a crappy underfunded show, and then it also thins out and puts the exertion on the guys, and adding an extra hour, like you said, to Nitro This is unfortunately the beginning. Thunder is not the reason for the failure, but it is emblematic of where it's going to go and the decisions they make that kind of watered down the product as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was the show in general felt like a Starrcade and Nitro replay show, and it was way too much of that. When I was listening to the Thunder podcast that Shivani did, they mentioned that a fan timed the show, or the matches, a 3-hour show, 38 minutes of matches. That was it. Yeah, so way too much replaying. And, they had a lot of matches, I guess, but they were short, and most of them weren't very good. It just left a lot to be desired, I thought. I do think going back to the 2 hours after this week will help things out. Obviously, the timing was bad on some things. The whole story build-up is this whole Hogan Sting thing, and I think because it started bad, and now we've got resolution, which was bad. So, I just wasn't crazy about the show overall. I give kudos to them that they brought in all of their main players. I mean, you had Hogan, Hall, Nash, Giant, Flair, Hart, Luger, Savage. They're all here, so they did get all their big names. So it does let you know that, hey, the Thunder's not going to just be Chris Adams, Louis Spicolli, names like that, Tenzan and O'Hara, things like that. So there were some good things, Cruiserweight title changed hands. So there's some things. It wasn't a terrible show. It wasn't a great show. But for the most part, I think it was more bad than good. And that's all I've got to say about it. Anything else you guys want to add before we kind of wrap things up?
I honestly not really. I wish the show, like you said, I wish that they could at least give you a half hour of decent content, especially in a 3-hour show. Like I said, that was the only thing I kind of got out of it. Are we really kind of thinking at this point that Thunder was as bad as we thought it was back then, or did we? I mean, Kaiser, did you honestly enjoy Thunder?
Oh no, I think I liked Thunder. Nitro was always the A show, and this was always the B show, but I think I liked it. But it's gonna have some bad weeks, and I'm curious to see how things go forward. If it's going to be more of a Nitro recap show, or if it's going to start forming its own, identity, and we're going to see more of maybe some of the talent that you're not, it gives them a little bit more spotlight for the Chris Jerichos and the Dean Malenkos of the world that, maybe can shine a little bit more because, the Hogans and stuff, the Hogans and Savages and Nashes and Flairs, they can shine on Nitro and give some of the more mid-card guys a time to, spotlight themselves on this show. So we'll see how they go going forward. And that is going to be our show this week. For now, I guess subscribe to the Monday Night Tours on iTunes and Google Play until we figure things out. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook and all that. We'll kind of keep things updated as we go forward with the layout and the format of this show. As we continue to discuss WCW Thunder now that it's all on the network. So for Lee Marshall and Hollywood Haddix, I am Josh Kaiser. And we will see you next time on maybe the Monday Night Tours or whatever else the show is, because we are desperately out of time, guys. Like, really, I think the time's just about out, so we really got to go. We should probably go now. We're out of time.
Do we have another 10 or 20 seconds?
We have another 20 seconds here, 30 seconds maybe. We've really got to go, guys. That is it for me. We will see you guys next time.
See ya.
We also have 15 seconds here, guys, so just wanted to say don't forget to subscribe, follow us on Twitter and Facebook and all that, and we'll see you guys next time and watch the January 15th editions of Thunder, and we will be back to discuss that next week. All right, we're out of time. Bye!